Have you ever wondered about the Robinson Curriculum book list? Maybe you're even hesitant to start it because sure, you see the value in all the historical books, all the nonfiction, the civics, the government, but you're also wondering, the Bobbsey twins, Tom Swift, really? What's the value in that? Well, I'm hoping to persuade you in this video of the tremendous value that is the entire list working together. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned for the rest of this video. Also, don't forget to subscribe before you leave if you're new here. I like to make videos on homeschooling in general and Robinson Curriculum in particular. I'm also going to be really honest with you and share in this video what few books I am going to replace and what I'm going to replace them with. Because I'm sure as a parent, everybody has those little tweaks and that's perfectly fine. And so we're just going to go over a lot of the whys of this book list. So stay tuned. Okay, so first off, the RC book list is obviously a really well-rounded list. You've got historical books, civics, governments, autobiographies, fiction, nonfiction, poetry, it's all there. Now, it's out there. If you Google it, the RC book list, you're gonna find it so you can see it for yourself. Now, approximately 80% of these titles are available on Amazon. About the same 80% are available on open source, just free places like archive.org, places like that. But the rest, I find they're only available with the Robinson Curriculum. You'll need the CDs or you'll need to print them because some are very difficult to find. So in order to complete the 208 books on the book list that are meant to be your formal academic reading studies from the ages of 6 to 18, you're gonna need to either buy the CDs or sign up for the online access. Now, it is arranged in order of difficulty, obviously. However, there is a little bit of controversy with the life of George Washington and I think the Christopher Columbus book. Some parents choose to fit that in a little bit later. Just if it's too difficult for the child, skip it, do another book or two, and then see where they're at. Try it again. If not, again, skip it and bring it back. Now, there are some children adventure books in the court order reading list, and there are also a lot more in the additional extra recreational reading for the children that are intended for the first 2 years of reading. And this is really to get them excited about reading. And these books are selected not just for their great morals, but also their vocabulary. If you take a book like The Tale of Patty Muskrat and you compare it with a book like, you know, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, the vocabulary is very different. And so that's why these books are selected. Also, on a note, another reason why is they have very little pictures. And so they're really trying to build up the child's imagination, versus a lot of books today at the library have more emphasis on the illustrations, on the pictures. So the reason why one of the reasons why these books are selected: less pictures, more imagination, great morals, great vocabulary. So that's why these hand-selected books are of great value. Now, one of the goals of the Robinson Curriculum book list is to really build a love of reading in a child, because this is one of the ways that you're going to really help them build good reading comprehension. They have to love what they're reading in order to grasp it, to understand it. That's really going to help them if they're enjoying the material and they love it. One way that you can instill this love of reading is by modeling it yourself. Spontaneous times during the day, you picking up a book and you reading. Now, I started tracking how many books I read on an app on my phone with Goodreads earlier this year. I don't remember exactly when I started tracking, but I wanted to be really aware of this. And so far I've read 60 books and I'm hoping that I can read more. And if you're wondering, how do you find time to read? I have 6 children, it's really busy, I'm homeschooling, but there is time. And one of the reasons why the Robinson Curriculum obviously says no TV, no screen time is to make room for spontaneous reading, just lounging around, reading. I like to put books everywhere. You'll see my bookshelves, my hanging shelves everywhere, and that really helps encourage spontaneous reading and a love of reading. And so that's why early in the list, in the core order reading list, you will find adventure books for children to engage them, to get them excited, to use their imagination. And just another side note too, let them go at their own pace. That's what I read in the course intro, in the course outline. If it takes them months to get through this book, it's okay. And if they devour this in a couple days, in a few days, in a week, then that's okay too. Just let them go at their own pace. Now, all curriculums have some sort of bias, and these are the well-known ones with the RC curriculum. Freedom and free market economics, which I totally am a fan of. History books that are made by those that made the history versus historians. So we're reading books. There's a lot of autobiographies later on in the Court Order reading list. And so we're reading about the people who made the history from the people themselves versus textbooks, historians. So that's another bias, which I also am a big fan of. Let's talk about fiction, because this could be the hot button issue, right? People, parents might not see the value of having fiction in the Court Order reading list. Now, I get it. I don't like reading fiction myself because I have so very few precious reading windows, right? I have such little free reading time that in that time I want to maximize it by learning something. I'm always trying to improve, grow, learn new skills. So that's where my focus is. However, I'm grown, right? And I'm raising a family. These children, they have all the time in the world. They have lots of time, right? They don't have the pressures of, you know, the modern world. So they have time, and they're at the very beginning. They're at the beginning. They're just starting out their reading life, right? So we want to get them excited. We want them to build reading comprehension. We want them to use their imagination, and that's where fiction comes in. Now, I have written down here some reasons why fiction is so powerful. Fiction helps you understand other people's perspective, okay? It has the power to communicate the way nothing else really does. You can insert yourself fully and completely in someone else's mind. And it's a meld between the mind of the reader and the writer and the minds of reader and character. Okay, when you read fiction, you're seeing the world through another character's eyes. It's like that quote, a person who knows how to read has the ability to live 1,000 lives, because you are transplanting yourself in another person's life, and they can experience things that you will never get to experience in your life, but you're gonna get to kind of live through that, through this fictional character, and learn their lessons from the situations that have been applied to them. So you're not limited by your own life experiences. And so this is very powerful, especially to young children who don't have a lot of life experiences. See, when you're studying history, you can read a book that just gives you dry facts or anecdotes, but historical fiction, for example, the G.A. Henty books that we always talk about, right? When you're talking about historical fiction, now this sets you down in the middle of a time period, and it allows you to taste and touch the world around you, interact with contemporaries, solve problems. You understand the historical period in such a way that you never really could if you just had a removed perspective of a history book. And that is why these books make such an impact, like the G.A. Henty books. Fiction allows you to look at the world in an entirely different light. These books take you inside the mind of the characters. You're seeing the world defined on their terms, the metaphors used for their surroundings, the context of events, and the perspectives of happenings in their relationships. Now, this is a double-edged sword. This is why, because it is so powerful, because it makes such an impact, that you need to select books with good morals, good vocabulary, because you are putting that child in that situation, in that story. And that's why you have to be really picky about what books you give your children to read. All right, so I made my case a little bit of why reading fiction is so important for young children, but now we're really gonna dive into some of the authors behind the books in the RC book list. For example, Arthur Scott Bailey, who wrote a lot of these Tuck Me In tales. Why are these books so important? What value do these books have? Well, let me read you a quote from the Newark Evening News. Mr. Bailey centered all his plots in the animal, bird, and insect worlds, weaving natural history into the stories in a way that won educators' approval without arousing the suspicions of his young readers. He made it a habit to never write down to children and frequently used words beyond the average juvenile vocabulary, believing that youngsters respond to the stimulus of the unfamiliar. So these are not dumbed down books. They are written up and challenging. They are, you know, raising the bar and challenging the reader, and they're meeting the challenge. They enjoy these books. If you ask your child to choose between these two, they're gonna want to read this one. They have much better reading comprehension with these books than I noticed with these books. That's just the truth, because they're really enjoying these. They really love these. That's the value. Obviously, we still need these books, right? We want to have a well-balanced diet, but having this in the beginning is going to get them hungry to read more. Okay, so let's bring up another one that people might have objections to, and that is Five Little Peppers and How They Grew. Now, the question was raised, okay, I understand reading one of the books, but why all the books in the series? Why do they need to read all the Five Little Peppers books? What's the value in that? So let me explain to you why it's so important. This whole series spans 17 years, beginning with Phronsie as a three-year-old and finishing with her as a 20-year-old young lady. Now, what the series is about, if you don't know, is they live and learn and play in their little brown house. They are poor, and Mamsie must work constantly to keep the wolf from the door, but their lives are unexpectedly happy. They make do with whatever they have, and the older children help the younger ones. They bear bad times as best they can, and they make the most of good times. So again, going back to the fiction, this is teaching them, you know, good morals, good behavior. It's gonna make them more grateful for their life. They're seeing how other people react to adversity and the strength behind that. All right, so you're convinced they're great quality books, but why read the entire series? Well, let's be honest here. We all love series. Americans, I think, are obsessed with movie sequels, right? Even if they're horrible, people still go out and see the sequel because there's something about those characters that we liked in the first book, in the first movie, and we want to see what happens to them, right? For example, there have been fictional books that I read that I was really into, and when the book was over, I felt like I was saying goodbye to somebody that I knew and I really liked, and I just was thinking to myself, now what? So I think that's a pretty common thing with people who like to read good. That's how you know you have a good fictional book. And so this entire series, it's not bad. It's only 5 books, I think, in the entire series. So that's not too bad of a series, but it's just enough to give you that span of 17 years to see them grow up. So it's just a great benefit to have that in your children's reading diet, to see the lifespan, to see the 20-year span of these characters' lives and what happened to them, and they can learn so much from them, and it's very familiar to them. They will have great memories of it. One of the things that I learned from the Read Aloud Handbook by Jim Trellis, which I highly recommend, is to read the same books over and over to your children, because that's how it will become part of them, become part of their childhood. You can't just read it once and never read it again. The more times you read it, and that's why kids will bring you the same books that they want you to read to them over and over again. This is how it becomes part of their childhood. And so being able to have a series like this is going to become part of their childhood, and these are great lessons to learn. Moving on, let's talk about Tom Swift. You might be thinking to yourself, really, why all these Tom Swift books? Let me convince you how these Tom Swift books are amazing, and every child should read them. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the Tom Swift books, they deal with science fiction and adventure novels and emphasize science, invention, and technology. Several famous people, including Steve Wozniak and Isaac Asimov, have cited Tom Swift as their inspiration. Several inventions, including the taser, has been inspired by Tom Swift's fictional inventions. In fact, TASER is an acronym for Thomas A. Swift Electric Rifle. I bet you didn't know that, right? So that's pretty cool. Now, the Tom Swift books have been credited with assisting the success of American science fiction and establishing the Edisonade, stories focusing on brilliant scientists and inventors, as a basic cultural myth. Tom Swift's adventures have been popular since the character's inception in 1910 By 1914, 150,000 copies were being sold year-round. Now, a 1929 study found the series to be second in popular only to the Bible for boys in their early teens. That's how popular this was. And by 2009, Tom Swift books had sold more than 30 million copies worldwide. Now, and again, a number of scientists and inventors and science fiction writers have accredited Tom Swift with inspiring them, including Ray Kurzweil, Robert A. Heinlein, Isaac Asimov, and the Tom Swift Jr. adventures were Steve Wozniak's favorite reading as a boy and inspired him to become a scientist. So if you want to inspire your children to become scientists or to invent something, these Tom Swift books are amazing. Also, Gone with the Wind author Margaret Mitchell said she read the series as a child. So this series has inspired so many famous scientists and writers and inventors. This series, and it's in the Robinson Curriculum book list. I think it's a great addition. I think I see the tremendous value in it. All right, so now I'm just gonna be really honest with you and share what books I am skipping from the RC book list and what I'm going to replace them with. So I'm just gonna be honest with you and share my reasons. 4 books by Horatio Alger. Now, I bought all the Horatio Alger books first off of eBay. I even did a video on it. Maybe you caught it before I deleted it. But a viewer, and I'm so glad they did, let me know, alerted me to the fact that he had a very questionable past. And so I looked it up myself. I did the research. I don't just believe everything anybody tells me on the internet. I do the research myself, and I found out that they were right. And so I deleted the video and I threw them all away. It's not information that is very public. It is online. You can find it. However, it's just not something really well known, because he also did a lot of good in his life towards the end, a lot of working with poor teenagers, homeless youth. And there's, I think, a parade named after him, and maybe even a book award. So it's something you have to dig into to find, but it is out there. In 1860s, Alger quietly resigned as a Unitarian minister at a church on Cape Cod after he was accused of assaulting 2 boys. And here's the kicker, he never denied it, okay? He left, he ran away. So, and I don't want to get too graphic as to what these assaults were on the boys, but you can probably imagine. So the thing is, he never denied it. So that just unequivocally proves to me that he did do these things. In fact, he ran away to escape any kind of legal persecution. Alger's biography on the Unitarian Universalist Association's website describes complaints lodged against him when he was a minister in Brewster in 1866. It said he did not contest them and left town. And so most of his books are rags to riches by working hard, but often under the tutelage of a wealthy man. And so without getting too deep into it, I personally believe that yes, we all sin, we all make mistakes, but there are certain boundaries or lines that are only crossed by people with a truly depraved mind that God has given over, like in Romans 1, to a reprobate mind. And I can't imagine how that mind is not going to influence a child with a story such as this. It sounds like grooming the older wealthy man, you know, with younger children. And like I said earlier in the video, it's so important to pick quality material because they are transplanted into these characters' minds, into these situations. And so that's why, given that person's history and how he did not deny it, it's going to carry into the writing. And so I'm choosing to skip those books. So what am I replacing it with? Well, I'm just going to replace it with more Rover Boys or Tom Swift books or other books from the additional reading list. And then for the girls, I'm probably just going to replace it with more Dottie Dimple, Ruth Fielding, Little House books. Also, I have a lot of outdoor girls books. So I'm probably just going to replace those 4 books with that. And so the only other 2 books that I'm going to skip are the John Calvin books, The Institutes of the Christian Religion, just because I'm an independent Baptist. So I am just going to choose to replace that with our daily Bible reading. You know, we go to 3 church services a week. We have DVDs that our church produces and like-minded churches produce. We have conferences that we go to. So there's a lot there as far as the Christian religion for us. So we're just gonna skip that. That's it though. I plan on going through the whole rest of the list. And again, let me know if you are currently an RC family, if you're thinking about it, if you used to be. Let me know if you have any kind of reservations, like the book list, you know, that was one of them. Are there any other reservations that you have about this curriculum? It sounds good, but what's that but? Because honestly, I just really want to get the message out and share. I love homeschooling. I enjoy it so much. This way of homeschooling is just so enjoyable. It's so freeing. I honestly love homeschooling. I just really crave the days where we have nothing planned, nothing going on, and we can just slowly work through our school day and just lounge around in the afternoon, nothing to do, just reading books on the couch, talking about books, having story time, me reading aloud. Those are my favorite days, and I really enjoy homeschooling. I think this is such a great way to go about it, and so I really just want to get the message out. So if there is something that you have a problem with or you're hesitant about, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to maybe address it in a video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.